Good day. Welcome to another edition of Ebima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs, the X Review edition. Before I continue, I urge you to please press the like button. And if you're new to my show, I also urge you to subscribe. I urge you to subscribe because I'm running a project now, Project 5,000. I'm trying to get this channel to 5,000 subscribers, and you'll be helping the channel grow if you subscribe. The fallout from the release of the Epstein files is still continued and still reverberating. And quite a lot has been said and revealed. But in the midst of all that has been going on, we've been seeing how many countries and many peoples are picking that part of the news that really affects and influences their own reality. The British have taken to accusing the Russians of being very much in that project because, as they see it, they said that operation, they said Epstein. There was an allegation in some British newspapers that Epstein was working for the KGB and that those ladies were honeypot entrapment by the KGB agents. That narrative is so not so nice. And because of that, the first report I have here is a satire that comes off of that particular session by some British newspapers, I think, particularly the Mail. This is one satire from that report. So this person says, "I knew it. I just knew it. Putin and the KGB behind the extinction of the dinosaurs." This is from, I guess it's an Irish newspaper. It says, exclusive investigation reveals shocking truth about the prehistoric extinction. This is a satiric take on all the allegations being put out there by the British newspapers. They are making light of this, and it's quite a tragedy that quite something so fundamental and monumental, that something that affected so many people's lives is being made a travesty just because the British have come to show that they really don't like the Russians. So this is the beginning point of it. Another person too who was affected by this is a very consequential tweet, and it was retweeted by no less a person than Elon Musk. Melinda Gates' response to Epstein files suggests Bill Gates got an STD from Russian girls and planned to secretly medicate her. The NPR emails in the file suggest that Bill Gates had additional affairs and that he tried to get medication to treat a sexually transmitted infection and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing. His representative also said all of this is false. What's your dominant emotion? So this is Bill Gates' wife, and she was being interviewed by the NPR.
These details. Sad. Just unbelievable.
Maybe we should start it from the beginning again.
Suggests that Bill Gates had additional affairs and that he tried to get medication to treat a sexually transmitted infection and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing. His representative has said all of this is false. It is not on you to have to respond to the details of that alleged behavior, but I wonder what your dominant emotion is when you read these news articles with these details. Sad. Just unbelievable sadness. Unbelievable sadness, right? And again, I'm able to take my own sadness and look at those young girls and say, my God, how did that happen to those girls, right? And so for me, it's just sadness for, I left my marriage. I had to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave my marriage. I had to leave I felt I needed to eventually leave the foundation. So it's just sad. That's the truth, right? And it's kind
of... Well, that's a Melinda in the Melinda and Gates Foundation. Her husband was extensively a very close friend of Jeffrey Epstein. He went a lot to his island, and these revelations are also showing that he he played a very big role in Jeffrey Epstein's life. Anyway, going on to the next story now, we have a situation where the Americans are telling us negotiations between Russia and US and Ukraine in Abu Dhabi are ongoing, with Witkoff and Jared Kushner scheduled to arrive on Wednesday. White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt has said. She emphasized that Trump, Witkoff, and Kushner are prepared to make the impossible possible to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. Yes, President Trump did say something about it. And in fact, just prior to making this video now, we got indications that they're already in Abu Dhabi already. So we go on to the next story now, and this has to do with the Chinese. Ma Ning is a spokeswoman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, and she is talking about the latest visit. There's been a string of visits of presidents, the Irish president, the Finnish Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Britain, all have been going to China in recent times because after the Davos and all that had happened with Greenland, it just turned out that the world is now upended and many other countries now feel that they need a more stable, reliable partner in China, and many of them have been trooping to China. President Xi Jinping noted when holding talks with Yamandu Ossi of Uruguay that the international situation is volatile and turbulent. Acts of unilateralism and bullying are growing more rampant. China supports Uruguay in assuming the rotating chair of the G77 and China, and stands ready to work with Uruguay to strengthen solidarity and cooperation across the global south, jointly promote an equal and orderly multipolar world and universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization. So this really is where it is now. A lot of countries are going to China. They are trying to improve their bilateral trade. Already we know that China is a leading trading partner of 120 countries in the world. Many of them are in Africa and Latin America, but I dare say that on an individual country note, there's still a lot of them also in Europe. And at this time when President Trump is placing a lot of tariffs on many countries are now deciding that they should deepen and improve their ties with China, particularly as they also have the opportunity to dollarize. They can do their trade using currency swaps and using local domestic currencies. So that was the Uruguayan president. He will be the 7th president, if not the 10th president that will be visiting China. Another tweet now that has been retweeted, obviously, by Elon Musk again. Elon Musk has appeared twice. I should say that Elon Musk owns Twitter and he is by far the biggest followed person on Twitter. He has over 220 million people following him on Twitter. In the face of the fact that he does so many things, builds spacecrafts, builds cars, manages so many corporations, you wonder how he has this ability to continue to tweet, but he does tweet a lot. He's one of the most fervent and virulent tweeters, and that was why he bought Twitter and changed it to X. This is an indictment of the EU. The EU saw that a Romanian candidate was about to win the election, and that was not a candidate they liked. Romania was moving towards a different direction from the EU, and the EU made a very serious allegation, and they denied the candidate that was supposed to win the election in Romania, and they alleged that he had the support of the Russians. Well, it has turned out the US government directly attacked the EU for essentially faking elections in Romania. This is pretty crazy. If you think a bit about it, the US says Europe stages elections so their candidate wins and this is not a democracy. So this is what has happened here. House Judiciary and new non-public documents cast doubt on the allegations of Russia interference that led to Romania court to undo the country's 2024 presidential election. TikTok told the European Commission that it found no evidence of a coordinated Russian campaign to boost the winning candidate, Călin Georgescu, and the key allegations made by the Romanian authority and informed authorities of this finding. Since then, public reporting has shown that alleged Russian TikTok campaign was actually funded by another Romanian political party. It's quite ironic that the European Union now got to interfering very directly in the elections. They interfered. They tried. They did their best to interfere in the elections in Georgia. They failed in that particular project, but they interfered very much in the election in Moldova. They were now really, really actively trying to be part of the election process so that they can have candidates that fall within their way of thinking. One election now that is creating concerns is the election that is going to take place in Hungary, and Viktor Orban is already accusing the EU of trying to foist a candidate, an EU-leaning candidate, on the Hungarian people. So this is what the Americans have found out, and Elon Musk has also said it. Elon Musk actually has a problem with the EU. He calls them a party, he calls them tyrants, and he says they censor the information they don't like. Anyway, this is about the next story is still about the Iranians and the Americans. It turned out that we got news today that the Americans shot down an Iranian drone that has been shadowing the USS Abraham Lincoln. But the Iranians promptly dispatched another drone to go and continue the work of the first drone. They have a lot of drones, as we know. They have been shadowing the Abraham Lincoln, and that has become a little worry for the Americans. And maybe that was the reason why the Americans have moved the Abraham Lincoln carrier group away from the close to Oman and have now moved it towards closer to the Indian Ocean. Iran is sending another drone towards the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln after the US shot down the previous one. Well, it turns out that the Iranians have actually put out a picture that says that their drone came back and that they are alleging that their drone was not shot down. Anyway, let's go on to the next story, and that story is about. This is a very interesting story. In fact, FIFA president weighed in. He was asked if Russia should be allowed to play football again. Quite a lot of sports bodies are already allowing Russians to play. They are allowing Russian Defensive Federation, the Chess Federation, quite a lot of federations on their own are allowing FIFA to come back on board. I mean, Russia to come back into the fold of the sports committee. And Infantino, the FIFA president, actually weighed in on it, and he said that it is time for Russia to be welcomed back into the sport body. Breaking, FIFA President Infantino says Russia ban should be lifted. We have to, definitely. He argues the ban has not achieved anything and only created more frustration and hatred, saying letting Russians play would help. Having girls and boys from Russia play in Europe would help. So he said this, and something has actually happened. Infantino wants the rules changes so FIFA never ban any country because the acts of their politicians. Already we know that FIFA was really criticized because of how the Israelis have been allowed to play. The Israelis are having a lot of problems whenever they go to play in Europe. And because they were playing in Europe, UEFA was called on to ban them, and FIFA was called on to ban them. But President Trump said that if Israel is banned from playing, he will take action. So politics has become a part of the footballing culture now. In 2022, after the invasion of or the beginning of a special military operation, the many sports bodies, of course, most of those sports bodies are led by Europeans, and they did all their best to ban Russia. Incidentally, now the National Olympic Committee is now led by an African woman, a Zimbabwean, and I think she is very much amenable to getting the Russians to partake in the Olympics again with their national flag. And I think that's the direction she is also going. So this is what, but there's a follow-up story on this, and we will get to that follow-up story. It's a very interesting follow-up story. This is Kirill Dimitrov is the person who will be meeting with Steve Witkoff. He put out a tweet here. President Trump confirms that President Putin kept his word on the 1 week pause in some long-range attacks. Yes. Some people were alleging that President Putin broke the energy ceasefire and that because the big attack that took place against the Russians, I mean, against the Ukrainians, destroyed all of their health, energy infrastructure in Kiev. That that attack took place after Putin had promised, but President Trump confirmed that that promise had wound
No,
down.
he agreed. He kept his word on that. It's a lot.
Ukraine, Mr. President. Yesterday you were talking about how Vladimir Putin had agreed to a pause during the cold weather. Overnight, those attacks have started up again.
I know. It was Sunday. It was Sunday to Sunday, and it opened up, and he hit him hard last night. No, he agreed. He kept his word on that. It's a lot. 1 week is, we'll take anything because it's really, really cold over there. But
Ukraine, Mr. President.
So he confirmed that President Putin kept his word. They waited for 1 week, and I think it was that week ended in February 1st. And then the Russians planned their attack and they launched the biggest attack with missiles for a long time. The Ukrainians are still reeling from that attack. So President Trump confirmed that Putin kept his word. Putin kept his word. Ukraine is falling to the Russian bear. Yes, let's see this story. It's from BBC, I think. It took this from BBC. We can see here now all the familiar places that we've been seeing in the news in recent times. So Bryce here says, Ukraine is falling to the Russian bear. Russia is on the move, gobbling up more and more territories, being welcomed as liberators by people beaten down by the satanic government of Zelensky. Maybe Vladimir Putin freed the Ukrainian people from the grips of Satan. Well, that's his own opinion. Yeah, but to a large extent, most of the places that the Ukrainians have been, the Russians have been liberating, as the Russians call it. The Russians call any place they take in these 4 regions here as liberation. In these places, they are usually welcome. Most times, the citizens don't even want to leave. They want to stay and wait and see the outcome of the war. And most times, eventually, the Russians win, and then they come out and they celebrate. So this is the regions that have been under contention. We see that to a large extent, the whole of Luhansk has already been freed, or using the Russian word, liberated. Donetsk still has Konstantinovka, Kramatorsk, and Sloviansk to be freed. So that's still the area that is still being held. Zaporizhia and Kherson also. Now we see that the Russians are moving very close to Zaporizhia, and they are just 10 kilometers away from Zaporizhia. So this is what's happening. The Russians are actually moving and making some advances. Slow though, those advances are slow. This map doesn't show it, but the Russians have also moved in much closer to Kupiansk, and then they have also opened up a lot of territories in the Sumy region. It's an ongoing slow strangulation of the Ukrainians. We will get to the next story now. This story says the Russian army destroys Ukrainian S-300 systems in Dnipropetrovsk and a HIMARS system in Kharkiv. That did happen. But if you ask me, this looks like an AI-generated picture. But the fact did happen that the Russians destroyed the Ukrainian S-33 system in Dnipropetrovsk and the HIMARS system. We got pictures of it because these days, when these attacks are taking place, they are taking place with drones. And there's always a drone. Most times, it's even the drones that identify the targets and then give the coordinates to the Iskandars and the Lancets and all those other weapon systems that the Russians have. So let's move on to the next story now. Financial Times is saying what? Iranian gunboats challenge US flag tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, this did happen. The Iranians had to back off because the tanker is an US flag tanker. The Iranians have been carrying out retaliatory seizures of any Iranian ship that is seized in the Western Hemisphere. They seized an American ship also in the Strait of Hormuz, within that neighborhood, those ones close to them. They've been seizing quite a lot. And this attempt to seize this particular ship was thwarted because the Americans have a lot of military assets around that neighborhood now. So they quickly ran into to help the American flagship that was in distress, and the the Iranians backed off. That's the story as it was told. The second round of Ukraine peace talks has been postponed after U.S. meeting in Florida without Ukraine at the table. Well, this was postponed, but the meeting is going to take place again. It was postponed from when it was supposed to have happened about 2 days ago, but the meeting is definitely taking place on I think between the 4th and the 5th of February. So that is already, these two parties are already in UAE. This is also the same story we just did. Vladimir Putin kept his word regarding the suspension of strikes on Ukraine, which was significant, Donald Trump stated. So this has come back on the feed again. That was the same story we had already seen. And then Germany says, German Friedrich Merz urges Europe to drop nostalgia for the US, speaking in Frankfurt and at an event hosted by the Deutsche Bank. So what is he saying here now? He said the old assumption about the United States as Europe's reliable backstop no longer hold, and that nostalgia and memories of better times will not help Europe navigate what's to come. Merz's message was practical. Europe should become more sovereign, less dependent, especially in technology. In parallel remarks in late January, he also pushed the strengthening of Europe's role inside NATO and framed a more self-confident Europe as essential to defending the rules-based order. He's saying a lot of things, but unfortunately, just like a person that goes bankrupt, Europe has actually become left behind. There are only two poles now regarding technology, China and America. Europe is uncompetitive as an economy, and for the Americans, President Trump has shown, not just President Trump, I should say that J.D. Vance and quite a lot of the people that make up the MAGA team around President Trump have become very wary about carrying and shouldering the security cost of America, for the Europeans. They are the ones taking care of most of Europe's security, while Europe goes ahead and run welfare states. So this is what he's saying. He's saying that now it is time for Europe to start to take care of itself. It will be a long process because the process of rejigging and rebooting Europe is going to be a long one at a time now that they are not competitive, the economy is bad and all. But this is a story that President Elon Musk had already retweeted and we had seen it. This is a story the US government directly attacked the EU for essentially faking elections in Romania. Yes, they now have a new president, and that president ultimately is one that the EU is comfortable with. So we have the next story. The President Trump is sowing the seeds of war for the next Ukraine war. The president's fakeless approach to peacekeeping risks a flawed deal that will clear the way for another Russian invasion. What do you expect from a British newspaper? They don't want this peace process to continue. They lampoon and lamblast President Trump all the time. They do all they can to stand in the way of peace negotiations. The intent and the goals and the desires of the British regarding this Ukrainian war is quite telling. They want the Ukrainians to continue to fight and at the expense of young Ukrainian men. And for whatever reason, maybe because Britain is ruled by bankers and those bankers feel that their investments in Ukraine cannot be lost just like that. It's quite a sad thing. The British are committed to it, the MI6 and all the British leaders from Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak to Liz Truss, they've all been Hagango. And of course, they control the media, and the Telegraph is one of them. President Trump's effort is not commended in any form at all. So we'll go to the next story now. We'll go to the next story. This first story here is exclusive. US shoots down Iranian drone. Yes, we've already done that. We'll go to the next story. And the next story will be that This one now it's about what we've been seeing about this war, the drone footages. 3 Ukrainian servicemen showed a white flag and surrendered at the Russian forces drone operators. Russian attack helicopters are still unable to extract them from the combat zone, so drones are being used to deliver food to them. So they've already surrendered, and now the Russians have taken care of them. They've become the Russian responsibility. So they were lucky they saw the Russian drones and they decided to surrender to the, they're even putting up banners. This is the nature of the war now. The drones are, we can see some small FBP drones going to deliver goods to them. Because if they didn't surrender, those drones that are delivering goods to them would have been the same drones that would have been dropping bombs on them and killing them. So this is just the way it is now. Obviously, they are now being protected. It means that this is a kill zone that the Russians are controlling completely. More of the two armies have kill zones where they have their drone operators controlling, and these Ukrainian soldiers have chosen that they'd rather live than get killed. This again is the same story about the ceasefire, and we'll skip it and just move on to the next story. Zelensky says there is an initiative in the US Congress regarding sanctions against Russia. Now is the best time to adopt it. Everyone in the world says Zelensky is still hopeful that the Americans will come to his aid. I think he must be missing Biden. Biden was one who would always say we'll be with the Ukrainians as long as it takes, But over the course of time, his narrative was changing. But this is not what President Trump is saying. All that Zelensky has been doing to try and push Trump to see all the infractions of the Russians has not changed anything about President Trump. I will say it again and I will reiterate it. President Trump is not a friend of this Ukrainian president. This Ukrainian president and this Ukrainian people and administration led to him being impeached in his first term. And he remembers it. They are not his friends. He doesn't even sell American arms to them. And he calls Zelensky, for the lack of a good word, he just calls him a great salesman. Well, let's move to the next story now. Somehow, maybe it's the network, but somehow yes, this is the story that is really shaping the world. Yes, this is the one now. This one is the story that is haunting the world now, and it has to do with Ghadafi's son. Ghadafi's son has been killed. Saif al-Islam Ghadaffi has been assassinated. He was assassinated, and nobody knows why, and nobody knows how. But after 15 years, he survived ICC warrants, death sentences, militia hunts, and Libya's chaos. He is the son of Moumar Ghadaffi. He was expected to take over from Moumar Ghadaffi. He has actually run a presidential election. He has been the one who has been holding the Ghadaffi clan together. But things are really falling apart in Libya. General Haftar is in control of Benghazi, and then the national government in Tripoli, maybe they are not so strong. They are weak, but at least they have the support of Turkey, and that's the reason. So after that bombing by the Obama-led NATO, we now see that that country has been fractured and broken. They've not been able to carry on. They have warlords and rebels. Saif al-Islam was supposed to have one day become president, but that won't be happening anymore. Whoever has assassinated him will get more of the news as time goes on. But Gaddafi's son has been killed, and that's the news. Another story here now is I honored. Okay, what is this story here? Timing. His death comes 48 hours after U.S. brokered peace meeting between Saddam Haftar and Ibrahim. Pro-Gaddafi circles see a connection and the timing. Okay, so this is some conspiracy theory regarding the death of Saif al-Gaddafi. His death comes 48 hours after a U.S. brokered Paris meeting between Saddam Haftar and Ibrahim Deba, Libya's eastern and western powers. These are just the talk. I think maybe maybe because the Americans have started to try and put things together there. Somebody saw him as an obstacle, and it may just have been the reason why he was finally taken out. Gary Kasparov, a very strong opponent of President Putin, he says that stop standing with Ukraine and start fighting with Ukraine. Kasparov was a world chess champion. He has become a very strong opponent of the regime in Moscow. He is criticizing Mark Rutte. Mark Rutte went to visit Ukraine, and he was in Ukraine, and he went to visit one of these boiler stations there, and he saw the complete destruction. Kasparov is not impressed with the fact that he's talking about supporting Ukraine. So Kasparov says, stop standing with Ukraine and start fighting with Ukraine. Cut off Russia's ability to fund the war machine. Give Ukraine the weapons it needs to defend itself. Both of these things could be done today and save countless innocent lives. Kasparov is not as good a politician as he was a chess player. I can tell you that. Anyway, Russia's foreign intelligence, this is a revolution from the Russians. They say that Emmanuel Macron is trying to promote coups in Africa to take back countries that he had lost. France openly destabilized undesirable countries, including Burkina Faso, Mali, and Madagascar. That report I had already done last time in my video. I would want to end with a story about, this is where I want to end this story. The same FIFA president got the ear of a particular group of Ukrainians who put people on a kill list if they don't like what you're saying or if they feel that you're an enemy of Ukraine. So for proposing that Russia should be unbanned and called back into playing football in FIFA, that group has put the FIFA president Infantino on the kill list. So Ukraine puts FIFA boss Infantino on kill list over call to lift Russian ban. The events in Ukraine is quite interesting. Quite a lot of people are on that kill list. Once you oppose the Ukrainians, somehow you'll find your way to the kill list. And then this is the final one. I'll take this as the final one. US has warned Iraq that if it elects Maliki as the prime minister, Iraq access to its oil revenue will be restricted. Washington still controls Iraq's oil sales. Iraq's oil sales is paid into an account in Washington, and al-Maliki is share. It is very much leaning into Iran, and it means that if he wins, I think he has already been selected as the prime minister designate. America doesn't like it. America feels that being that he's a supporter of Iran, it will be a bad thing, and they don't like it, and they will stop releasing money to the Iraqis. Iraqis' access to its own funds is at the behest and at the goodwill of the Americans. It's only when the Americans feel so, and that's what has happened. They've not been free since America invaded them. Yes, Durov is the owner of Telegram. And he says French police currently raiding the offices of X in Paris. France is the only country in the world that is criminally persecuting all social media networks that that give people some degree of freedom. X, Telegram, and TikTok. Don't be mistaken. This is not a free country. Indeed, it is. Europe has lost the right to say that they are free democracies. They censor, they have a lot of laws. If you retweet some things in countries like Britain, you'll be in jail. There's no pathway for you to gain your freedom. And it's very dystopian now. It's what we used to read in Orwellian books and all. So freedom has flown away from Europe. Europe is now very much the capital of censorship. And Elon Musk's X has been raided. Durov himself was jailed and held in captivity for almost 3-4 months in Paris. When he went visiting, they cooked up one excuse against him and accused him of so many things. eventually they let him go because he's a citizen of not only France, he's also a citizen of the UAE. And most importantly, he's a citizen of Russia. Anyway, this is where I'll end the video for today. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have any views regarding opinions I just expressed, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Support Project 5000. Until my next video, you have a good day.